Aloha and how's it? Today we're talking about five of my favorite personalized LinkedIn connection invitation messages that actually work. So, more on that in a minute. How was your weekend? We had some big and funky waves this past week, but it looks like we'll get some more in the fun size range this week. Crossing my fingers, hoping for it. I actually will go out if it's safe enough for me to surf, even if there's like a bit of wind or bump on the face. My intention is to surf every day when possible, no matter whether the conditions are pristine or a bit on the gnarly side. So, one of the benefits, though, of surfing the messy stuff is that you actually get fewer people in the lineup. So, in the lineup just means people who are out there trying to catch waves. So, you can catch a lot more waves when people are not around. Sometimes you'll catch some really fun and funky ones, and you just have a good time. You can't take yourself too seriously. So, have you checked out my latest episode on the Mango Effect podcast this week? I talked about why boring is good, the importance of maintaining stability in work and life, and I also dove into a little bit about how best to navigate mental health challenges, especially whether you are experiencing them firsthand or you are supporting a close friend or family member. So, this is a really good one. Share a little bit of my heart in this one. So, I hope you enjoy that episode. While you're there, check out the other 38 or so episodes about creating a life you love, being a digital entrepreneur, living in Hawaii, learning to surf, doing life your way, and more. Lots of fun stuff up there. Now it is time for Mondays with Mindy. This is a weekly show on Monday afternoons, if you're based in the US, where I talk about all things LinkedIn pipeline, promo, and profiles, what I like to call the three P's of LinkedIn. So, do you have questions about LinkedIn that you want me to answer? Be sure to like this post, whether you're watching live or from the replay, to give it some social love and leave your questions below. I love questions. All of my topics, I should say 90% of my topics come from questions that I usually get asked all the time or are a special request from viewers. So if you have suggestions or things that you want me to cover, leave it in the comments below, shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn or elsewhere, and I am happy to cover it on a future episode of Mondays with Mindy. Let's get right to today's topic. How do you actually personalize LinkedIn connection invitation messages when you are intentionally building your network? We talk about intentionality a lot on Mondays with Mindy because it is so important to approach LinkedIn with a sense of purpose, with a sense of intention. And one of the questions I get asked a lot every time, just about every time that I work with someone who wants me to help them make the most of their LinkedIn profile, like after we work on their profile, people are like, okay, what do I do next? Like, how do I build my network? I don't know what to say to people. What do I say in a connection invitation? So, if you are like many of us on LinkedIn, you are not here to waste time. You want to use LinkedIn to actually build your business, grow your network, get connected with the right people, land your dream job, and have great conversations with like minded professionals. That's why we're here on LinkedIn. So, why does building a strategic LinkedIn profile take so much time? Like, are there any shortcuts? So, automation actually used to be an option for those with a higher risk tolerance who didn't mind enlisting the help of a tool that was chock full of pre written complex sequences. Using this type of automation, though, has always been very, very risky because LinkedIn is on the hunt. They're always on the hunt. And if you use a tool and you use it, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, we got shut down, we're going to create a new one. Always, always, always be wary of a tool that says they are skirting LinkedIn's rules or they can get you around and break the rules on LinkedIn without getting caught. Those are always a warning sign. You always want to avoid automation. So be very cautious because you can actually get your account permanently restricted by using automation. So since LinkedIn somewhat limits the number of connection invitations you can send in a week, there is not like an overarching one number that you have to pay attention to. But if you hit the limit, you will get a notification that says you've hit the limit for the week. So it may vary week to week, but keep in mind there is a limit. Most people, it's probably around 100, 150. I've heard some people that are able to send more than that too. So it really just depends on LinkedIn and what they're enforcing right now. But you will just get a notification that says, hey, you've hit your limit for the week. Try again next week. And that's okay. That doesn't mean your account is getting restricted. It just means you've sent a lot of connection invitations that week. So many people can no longer use the approach of sending as many connection invitations as they want and just kind of like crossing their fingers, hoping for the best. We used to do that, a few years back. That was kind of the name of the game, send as many as possible. But even if you could do that, you would still be wasting those connection invitations and also risk getting reported as a spammer. If somebody receives your message and they click that they don't know you, when they ignore your connection invitation, that's not a good sign to LinkedIn. So, are you curious what actually happens if you send a not so great LinkedIn connection invitation? This is fun. All right. So, one thing that could happen is the recipient might not even see the message. So, that's really not that bad, especially if you withdraw the connection invitation before they actually see it. That one's not too bad. Or the recipient could actually report that they don't know you, which means it's a black mark against your LinkedIn profile. If you get too many of these, LinkedIn will restrict your account. So just keep in mind, if you are sending to people you don't know, make sure you write a really well written connection invitation so you don't get black marks against you. You also could end up getting connected, but then you have no idea what happens next. I talk with people that have this happen all the time. They're like, Mindy, I can get connected to anyone, but the conversation goes nowhere, or I don't know what to say afterwards. I'm like, yeah, the connection invitation sets up all of the future messaging. So if you don't focus on that setup, then you are going to be kind of like connected, but feeling awkward after that. So really pay attention. I'm going to show you some examples later today. So the person also could see your connection message associated with their name for as long as you're connected. So keep in mind, when you send a connection invitation, it's almost like your first message. So at the top of the message stream, for the rest of the time that you're connected to this person, they're going to see what you sent them to start. So are you proud of that? Or are you thinking, there could be some room for improvement? That's really not what I want them to see for years on end. So keep that in mind. Or your network might get filled up with people who are never going to do business with you. Talk with a lot of people who are in this camp. They have 25,000 plus followers and connections, but they're pretty useless because they don't engage with the content. They don't really care. This person connected with anyone and everyone who would accept a connection invitation. So just be thoughtful about how you build your network because it will affect you for years to come. But not to worry, because we're going to get to the bottom of the LinkedIn connection invitations and figure out how to send a message that actually resonates with the person on the other end. So that connection invite, like I said, it sets the tone for your professional communication. It is worth paying a little attention to what you say here. I might say a lot of attention to what you say here. So, aloha for those who are joining now who don't know me. My name is Mindy Rosser. I'm the founder of Mindy Rosser Marketing, and I have a brand new program called the 90-Minute LinkedIn Profile for those who want to go from 0 to 60 on LinkedIn with their profile and their network. At the end of this live, or if you're watching the replay, you can actually check it out. I will share the details of how you can get instant access to the program at the end. So look in the comments if you're watching the replay and you'll see the link there. I am happy to answer questions too if you are curious about the program itself. Now, I help professionals who feel they are the best kept secret in their industry to become that go-to visible expert in their niche so they can get that next opportunity, grow their business, and scale their impact on LinkedIn. In this live, we are talking about why not figuring out how to send a well-received and appreciated connection invitation on LinkedIn is really stalling your network growth, and how you can get inspired by some easy to write connection invitations to start growing your network and starting better conversations that lead to more opportunities, because that's what we love on LinkedIn. So are you ready? Let's do this. Go ahead and like this post, whether you're live or watching from the replay, to give it some social love. Are you connecting with the right people? I ask this a lot because one common mistake I see a number of people make on LinkedIn is not at all related to the actual text in the connection invitation message. It's their targeting. So when you say targeting, we're targeting people on LinkedIn. So what do I mean by targeting? Okay, to whom are you actually sending your connection invitation to? Like, who is the person? Is there a certain group of people? Are there certain types of people that you send to? If you are not being thoughtful about identifying the right people from the get-go, it doesn't matter how good your connection message is if they're not the right person for the message. So far too often when I'm helping my clients troubleshoot, it's not just the connection message that needs a bit of work. Rather, it's matching what they're sending to the person they're reaching out to. For example, one of my clients had heard that having a podcast and inviting people to be on that podcast was the best way to get people to accept his connection message. He got all excited. He wants to set up the podcast. He's ready for the tech behind the scenes, all the branding for the show. I then asked him, I said, okay, hold on. Who is your target audience? Who are you trying to reach? Come to find out, they are C suite executives at large, stuffy corporations. I mean, imagine the amount of red tape around that situation, right? So, not at all a fit for being a guest on a podcast. Like, oh, let's just hop on my podcast and have a conversation. Not a good fit. So he'd have benefited from knowing his target audience a bit more, especially since they are a new market for him. So he's thinking in his mind, I've worked with entrepreneurs. Now I'm really focused on corporations. And this is how I'm going to approach them. It's like, wait. No, you have to approach them completely different. So understanding what people will or will not respond to is critical when it comes to writing a great LinkedIn connection invitation. Always match your connection invitation to the person you are sending to. So this can seem like common sense, but it's critical and sometimes we forget. So don't try to copy your colleague's magical connection invitation if you don't have a similar audience. Mistake happens all the time. So your connection invitation is all about connecting with people, real people, not just avatars. Sometimes we forget this too. We see pictures, but we just don't feel like they're real until we actually have a conversation, meet in real life, meet on Zoom. There is always someone on the other end of that connection invitation. There is always a human at the other end. Most people don't employ bots to review their LinkedIn connections, at least that I'm aware of. There's probably some tool out there that I've never heard of. As I advocate for every single LinkedIn interaction, pay attention to every LinkedIn connection message you send. Don't just try to mass blast them or copy paste as fast as possible. You never know what door that connection invitation might open, what opportunities you could completely miss because your connection message felt too automated, it felt kind of spammy, maybe it was just completely off base and irrelevant. If you're like many of my students and clients who are using their LinkedIn profile for business purposes, you value every single connection invitation that you send. You want to do it right, but you need your efforts to be somewhat scalable. Like, we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time we send a connection invitation. So there is a way to craft connection invitations that actually feels good to the recipient and also feels good to you without you having to go back to the drawing board every single time trying to think up something super clever to write. That is key too. It's really about creating personalization, but also just being kind of practical about what you're sending. You can send a very similar worded, it could be worded very similar to many different people. But if it's received, and especially if you are responding to those, maybe you ask a good question, then it is unique. It is still personalized because you are opening the door to real conversations. So you actually have scores of opportunities every single week. If we're thinking, okay, around 100 or thereabouts, maybe more, than that, at least 100 opportunities every single week on LinkedIn to open the door for your business, for your career, your project, or your driving purpose, because you can send connection invitations to people who can help you move forward. Are you taking advantage of them? Are you just letting those 100 opportunities, 100 thereabouts, just go to the wayside because you aren't sure what to say? Think about it. You have these opportunities, they're staring at you in the face. Everybody is on LinkedIn, but are you reaching out to them? So, how are you going to use your connection invitations? View them as valuable. They're assets. So I don't know about you, but I look at each new week as an opportunity to meet new people, to collaborate, to share ideas, and look for synergy. I value my connection invitations that I send. If you've ever received one from me, probably many of you watching this have, know that I care and I specifically chose to send that message to you. Like, there was a lot of thought that goes behind every single message that I send from my account. So because I approach LinkedIn with this mindset, the results I get from investing in LinkedIn have become the main driver of my own sales pipeline. So where do my opportunities come from? 95% of them come from my LinkedIn network, and the others are referrals from people that have worked with me and come across me on LinkedIn. So I'm not on LinkedIn to sell anyone. I am there to be a resource, to help where I can, and to connect with good people. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only person that's using LinkedIn in this way. I've actually been working with a couple. We just talked this past week. Both of them are job seekers. Okay. So when we started talking, they had fewer than 100 connections each. So she had, I think, right around 90, while he started with 39 or thereabouts connections. So now this is a really tough challenge because if you have ever been somebody with less than 100 connections, you will know that it is really tough to get people to say yes to your connection invitation unless they already know you or you're familiar with them in some way. So they are still kind of new to LinkedIn and, they're kind of under the gun because they have fewer than 100 connections. But guess what? They started using some of the connection invitation messages that I'm about to share. Like they are using versions of what I'm going to show you today. So they both more than tripled their networks, like three times, 3x their networks in less than 3 weeks. When I asked them about the time, I'm like, you're kidding. She went from like 90-ish connections to 338 last time I checked. He went from 39 connections to 149 connections. That is incredible. So I asked them, I said, wait, okay, how did you do this so fast? And they're like, Mindy, we just followed your system. There's some type of magic in the system and it's working, and we're going to keep doing it because we're pretty happy with the results. So I challenge you to approach LinkedIn with this mindset. Even though we are going to talk about tactics today, I'm going to show you very practical connection invitations. It's really your mindset behind the tactics that is the magic. The system is great, but if you are approaching it from the standpoint of, I want to game the system, I'm trying to just get people connected, you have an ulterior motive, or it's just not this pure intention of, hey, I'm on LinkedIn to get connection opportunities. I want to be exposed to opportunities that will help me grow my career, my net worth, get me connected with the right people, and I'm willing to give and also to receive. If you're not there with that mutually beneficial attitude, then you know what's going to happen is people are going to sense it. They're going to feel like you're pitching them. They're not going to accept your connection, even if you're using the exact same messaging. So keep that in mind. People can tell. Like we have like this spidey sense when it comes to accepting connections and like, should I let you in my network or not? People can sense a lot of things. So keep that in mind. All right. So my pep talk is done. Let's hop into the how to send a good connection. So we're going to look at 5 inspiring LinkedIn connection invitation message templates. All right. So 5. And if you are watching the replay of this, probably close to where this video is located, you will also see all of these templates that I'm going to share in written form. So please check that out because that will help you if you're like, Mindy, can you please show me what these templates actually look like? Okay. So you have 300 characters available for you to send a LinkedIn connection message. So again, 300 characters, that's not much real estate. So you have to be concise, you have to be straightforward, keep it short. Don't put links in here. Please don't put links. I have seen people put links and it looks very tacky, very spammy. No graphics, obviously no graphics, just text. So you are focused on text, your words. So even if you're not a great copywriter, you are a human who does business, right? Okay. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm not a copywriter. I don't know what to say. I said, well, do you send emails? Do you send messages to colleagues? Do you put something in Slack or Discord? So, do you comment on other people's posts sometimes? With all that writing experience, you have all the skills you need to draft a LinkedIn connection message. So, we talked about targeting earlier in this session. It's something I'll get into in more depth on an upcoming show, but it's really important here. Your targeting matters. Remember, you want to match your connection invitation message to the person you are sending the message to. The connection requests we are getting into today are going to be a bit more on the prospecting side of the spectrum as we really want to get into conversations. So these are like door openers. That's what we're focused on. We are going into this with the prospecting mindset. Even if you're like, Mindy, I'm not really trying to sell anyone. No, I don't mean that. I mean, we are going into the conversation wanting to continue the conversation. It's not just to get connected for the sake of getting connected. We really want to keep that conversation going if possible and when it makes sense. So even if they don't buy from us or become a referral partner, collaborate, any of that good stuff, it's about getting a conversation that leads to potentially doing business together, whether now or at some point in the future. All right, so number 1, this is what I call the savvy podcaster. So if you're wondering what's working right now, I'm going to share a big secret with you. For a lot of people in the marketing, sales, consultant space, inviting your potential prospects to be interviewed on a podcast is working really well. It's been working well for like 3-4 years now. So why is that? podcasts are still pretty trendy. People know that if they're the guest on your podcast, it will lead to marketing of themselves and their company by you. So it's instant cross promotion. It's an instant win win. The key here is that your podcast focus and pitch needs to feel authentic. If they're second guessing why you're inviting them to be on the show, you've already lost them. They're not going to accept. So here's an example of a podcast invitation. Listen closely. I'm talking with CMOs and thought leaders and think you may be interested in my new podcast research project that proves brands with genuine empathy in their messaging, CX and EX, are winning right now. Let's chat? Question mark. And then the person's name. So you can see I was very, very direct. This connection message was highly targeted. It led to about a half dozen calls being booked per month as a result of the outreach. And we sent less than 100 connection invitations total. We were very, very specific on who we sent this message to. We did our homework up front. So when that person accepted, we knew exactly what to say back. We knew how to personalize. We knew how to direct the conversation. So that's a pretty good conversion rate for cold outreach. If you are up for doing a podcast, this is a great option to use to start having initial conversations with your potential prospects. And for those of you who are in a new niche, or you just started a podcast, or you really want to get to know your prospects better, do a podcast and interview them. Like even if you just did like a mini series or 10 episodes with potential prospects, you're going to learn a ton. And it's better than having like discovery calls or something that's a little more generic. Like use the podcast, like create content, learn more about them. You get that little bit of talking time at the beginning and at the end. You also get to follow up with them afterwards. And what you want to say to them afterwards, you want them to know what you do. You also want them to just have a good experience so that they will refer you to other people. So there's so many. I want to go into depth in this one. I love this one. Can you tell? So one word of caution here, don't send too many of these, especially if your target audience loves to talk about themselves. Okay, so you're like, wait, Minnie, you just told me to send these, but don't send these. So I actually had one of my clients use this approach, and we had to pause any new outreach for 3 months because he got so backed up with podcasts because this technique worked very well. So if you are using this approach, please pace yourself. Don't send out 100 connection invitations trying to book people on your podcast. I usually recommend sending probably 10, 15 maybe per week. And that should give you a pretty good pace with the number of people hopping on your show. What you don't want to do is be overloaded with podcasts and people, and you have pre-interviews, and then you have to actually record the podcast, and it can feel very overwhelming. So just be cautious because this one works like gangbusters. If your targeting is right, your messaging is right. All right, number 2. The valued expert. So what do you do if you don't want to start a podcast or if you know your potential prospects wouldn't want to be a guest? There are a lot of audiences who don't want to be on a podcast. If your audience is pretty savvy in their area of expertise, like if they consider themselves a trusted advisor or an expert, you can still ask them to contribute, but to share their expertise in a bit more of a discreet way. So a number of my clients and students are either writing a book, creating blogs, publishing regularly, and they like to speak with experts in the field who are open to contributing. This type of connection invitation works especially well for authors who are publishing a book, digital course creators, specialists who are writing on specific topics. Those of you in those 3 spaces, this is a really good connection invitation to use. So here's an example of asking for a book contribution. I'm a leadership cultivator and author in the cannabis business. I'm working on a book for cannabis leaders. Can you do a quick Zoom interview with me for my book? That's it. It's very short. It's like, okay, I'm working on a book. I'm in this space. Can we chat? So first of all, he's got a great target market. Cannabis leaders have not been pitched to on LinkedIn incessantly like a number of other types of audiences. Next, he's writing on a topic that is immediately meaningful to them because cannabis leadership in general is a completely new thing. They are all looking for resources on how to lead a cannabis business better because it's different than every other standard business out there. They have a lot of different hurdles and challenges they have to navigate than a typical business. And is it a wonder that this connection message converts like gangbusters? More than a dozen calls per month for sending right around 100 to 120 connection invitations total. Those are pretty good numbers, especially if you're pitching a cold audience that doesn't know you from anyone. All right, so that's a really good one, the valued expert, asking people to contribute their ideas for whatever type of content you're working on. You can give them credit or they may want to be left anonymous. So just make sure that you touch base with them and let them know what they prefer. All right, number three, this I call the LinkedIn networker. So you don't have to have a podcast or a book or something like that. So what else can you do to what else can you send to people who might be great prospects who want to do business with you in some way? I like this option because it's less of an ask as long as the person on the other end is a bit more open-ended with their calendar and schedule. Okay? So that's caveat there. This will not work well with corporations or large organizations. Keep that in mind, but it can be just the opener for those of you with an entrepreneurial background or attitude. So, those who are always looking for a new opportunity and willing to give 15 minutes to hear about it. So, here's an example from reaching out to someone interesting who also commented on a post. So, hey, Jane, I noticed you just commented on that article by John Smith about what's driving us all crazy about business growth. I'd agree with, insert your point here, for a quick chat sometime. I think there may be some synergy with our businesses. So this is definitely not meant to be a copy and paste template. It is just to give you an idea of what you could say and more about the mindset of showing you've done your homework before you're reaching out. So, if the person is actually active on LinkedIn, it's a lot easier to find an opening to connect like this. This is one approach I use whenever I come across someone who seems wicked smart and like a great referral partner. It also works just as well for prospects. So, I love this approach. Like, if the person is commenting, they add a comment somewhere, you see it, you reference that in your connection invitation, and ask if they're open for a quick chat. I am not the one that tends to use this one particularly often because my calendar is pretty booked and I don't have like 15-minute slots like sitting on my calendar, and calls actually drain me a bit. So for me, I don't lead with that, but I do offer my 15-minute Calendly link very sparingly, but in the right circumstances. So it's up to you. Some of you really like to meet all of your LinkedIn connections. And so this may be perfect for your networking approach. So keep that in mind as well. All right, number four, the community member. So if you are a member of a professional community, I think all of us are, right? Like I'm raising my hand. I'm like a member of like, I don't know how many communities, a lot of them. You should be connected to everyone in that community on LinkedIn. Okay, so here's an example of a connection invitation that I actually used when going through Seth Godin's Alt MBA program. I used this back in like 2016 because I sent it while we were going through the program together. That was key. If it's like a time sensitive program, send it while you're in the experience together, not like months later. Most people actually accepted my connection invitation. So here's the template, the connection invitation. Hi, first name, just a howdy on LinkedIn to say I'm excited about continuing the Alt MBA 6 journey with you over the next 24 days. If I can be of help in any way, don't hesitate to ask. By the way, how do you feel about P3? Mindy Rosser, hashtag make a ruckus. All right, so this one, I am speaking all the jargon that is in that community. I'm talking about being in which cohort of Alt MBA, which was Alt MBA 6, really early days. I also made a point to say the next 24 days because it was I think like a 5-week program. And so I calculated the number of days and actually put the exact number of days we had left. And then also I asked about a recent project. So P3 was a project that we were working on. And then again, I hashtagged it make a ruckus because that was a hashtag and a theme inside of the cohort. So there was nothing spammy about this, but I could send the same connection invitation to everyone. So I didn't have to rework it. I didn't have to look at every single member, go pull up the Slack channel, try to find a comment, try to personalize it saying, I saw you said this in the community. I didn't need to do that. All I needed to do was let them know I was going through the same experience as they were and use the jargon. So this is a brilliant strategy. It's my actually one of my favorites. I've actually taught an entire masterclass on this inside of my membership because it was just like it was fire. It was really, really good. And people got excited because this approach does not require you to spam people. You are not reaching out to people you don't really like. You may not really know them, but you are all going through the same experience. So you have a common thread. You have something that you can reference you're both experiencing at the same time. So I love this one. So notice that I'm referring, like I said, a common experience we're sharing. I'm not selling anything. I merely want to connect. And by the way, on a side note, as a result of this outreach that I did during Alt MBA 6, I actually got connected with a fellow team member who years later reached out with an intro that led me to a project that almost topped 100K. And I was like, this is pretty cool, right? Six figures for sending some connection invitations way back when. I'm not going to complain about that at all. And I hadn't tried to sell anything. I literally was just connecting with the right person. And when they had a need I could solve, I was ready. All right. So that's how it works on LinkedIn. It's the long game. All right. And finally, number five, the event follow up. So whenever I attend a live event or watch the replay from an industry event, I always reach out to the presenters or the people who are active commenters and seem to share a common interest or perspective. Sometimes, like if I'm joining live, I will actually take screenshots of the gallery view in Zoom. You can do that. Put it into gallery view and then take screenshots of all the windows. And if it's a big event, you're going to have a lot of windows to screenshot. Then what I will do afterwards, I will look them all up on LinkedIn. And because hopefully they have their cameras on or they had a picture or enough information about them, if their first and last name was there, I can actually find them on LinkedIn. And I will reach out within a week. So it has to be fast. I will reach out to them and say, hey, let's get connected. What did you think of the event? What was your takeaway? I will also speak the jargon. So I will reference something that the presenter said or a question or a comment, something that everyone will recognize. Oh, you were actually there. You actually paid attention. So this is a brilliant strategy if you go to a lot of workshops or events. These connection requests tend to get a much higher acceptance rate because I time them well. Timing is key. So sometimes I'll even send the LinkedIn connection invitation while the presentation is going on. It's showing them that I'm actually watching live and paying attention and following up. So here's an example. I'm going to read it. I sent to Amy Landino during one of StreamYard's, I love StreamYard, one of their live stream summits. She accepted right away. Here's what I said. Watching your live presentation right now, and I love the analogy of the dead fish handshake. Presentation is resonating with me and how live videos are different from recorded videos. Lots to learn, and thanks for sharing your expertise today. Mindy. Okay, so you can see I was referencing something she was talking about right in that very moment, and I thanked her for sharing her expertise, so I was stroking her ego. So if you are on the receiving end of that connection, would you accept? Of course you would. It's hard not to accept an invitation from a fan who's like obviously paying attention to your work. So basically, you just need to be human. And how do you like being reached out to? Think about it. Like, what types of connection invitations put a smile on your face? And some of you say, "Oh, a connection invitation can put a smile on your face." It can, especially if you have somebody like that reaching out that is appreciative of something that you have done recently. So, one tip here, save good connection invitation messages that you receive and repurpose them to use for yourself. Like if you receive one, you're like, wow, that was really good. Like, how did they think to mention that or frame it in that way? Take a screenshot and save it in a swipe file. I've received some really clever messages that stroked my ego or just really got me to pay attention. And I saved them in a swipe file. And I actually use them when I'm kind of stuck and trying to figure out how to approach someone. I will pull them out and look at them and say, oh, yeah, that was a good one. I'm going to try it. So you may be asking yourself, what's a good connection acceptance rate? That's one thing that I get asked. You heard me throw out a few numbers too. How do you know if your connection invitations are actually working? I'm going to give you some numbers here. Write them down. So I'll keep it short. You are looking for a 25 to 35% connection acceptance rate when you are reaching out to prospective clients. And we were really trying to focus on business opportunities and people that you may or may not know. So people that are cold prospects or people you may want to do business with. 25 to 35%. That means 25 to 35% of people that you're sending connection invitations to should accept. If you actually know them, like if you're using the community one, you're probably going to get 50%, if not higher. If you are going through a similar experience or you showed up to an event, you're probably going to be that 35% range. I think is probably pretty good. If you're reaching out to a very hard to reach audience, expect that number to be a little bit lower. It may be 10 to 15% of people accepting your connection invitation. Just understand, especially if you're reaching out to higher ups in corporations, big organizations, they tend to not accept connections as readily. They may be buried in them and they feel like you're going to sell them something. So just keep that in mind. Anything above that, you've definitely got a winner. So if you're like, Mindy, yeah, I'm about 25 to 35% of people accepting my connection invitation. Fantastic. If you're consistently hitting around like 10% or single digits, you definitely need to find something that's working better for you. So do change it up. If you find yourself 10% or below, think through your message approach, think through your targeting, think through your people, and see if you can boost that into that 25 to 35% range. Okay, so there you have it. We covered a lot. If you are ready, if you're like, Mindy, this was great. I loved it. I'm ready to send connection invitations. Perfect. Go send a connection invitation. Try one of these five. Come up with one that is your own. And if you are also thinking, okay, Mindy, but I'm a little bit embarrassed because my LinkedIn profile isn't up to snuff yet. If you're ready to start getting more people accepting your LinkedIn connection invitation so you can start getting new leads or land your next opportunity, join me inside of, make sure I have the right link here. Join me inside of the 90-minute LinkedIn profile program, where we will get your LinkedIn profile up and running in just 90 minutes. That is the promise of the program. It is streamlined. It is hop in, get your profile done, and go start sending connections. Like, put this into action. We also discuss exactly how to make LinkedIn the number one source for new business opportunities by using your LinkedIn profile in this way. So check it out if you're curious. All right, that's it for this week. I will see you all next week on Mondays with Mindy. We will have a special guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but we're going to have a guest. So it won't be just me next time. We will have a special guest talking with us. Should I tease the topic? Nope, I'm going to make you wait. Be on the lookout for the invitation that goes out, because we're going to have a special guest talking about sales. All right, we're going to be talking about selling. We're going to be talking about growing our businesses, and it's going to be a really fun conversation. So in the meantime, feel free to leave questions or comments below, and my inbox is open if you ever want to message me directly. All right, that's it for now. I will see you all